Welcome back to our campaign diaries where I review each session to see how I can improve and things we can learn both as players and dungeon masters. So the players just got done with the combat where they were trying to kill the Hand of Deceit, which cut off the hand of Woe, the proprietor where they're staying so they can get free lodging was the point of that quest. They cut off the hands of everyone in the Palazzo Sogni, which is the name of the brothel they were in. And the guards and everyone in there was unhappy that they had killed people who were innocent, and they just basically fled the scene, and they were told to never come back, leaving the Strada Lusuria, the Lust Street. They encountered some of the lustfulness from the ambience and people beckoning them to come to their establishments. They then dropped or put on disguises as they walked home. I had one of the people follow them, which they did not know about. I rolled some good stealth checks for the incubus that was following them that works for Oshi, who the players don't know is the one who owns that establishment. So the incubus followed him home and was trying to understand this group and like why they did what they did. So it didn't go inside with them, so it wasn't able to learn, but it does know that they're staying there. So that is part of the plan for me to have later on this incubus fights the players along with some other encounter, and it's going to be in a multi-room setting, and eventually it will teleport away with one of the players. And one of the other incubuses that has been studying Wink in particular, potentially another player, depending on if Wink is not up for it, will transform to look like one of the other players, and then will be the other players while Wink or whichever other character is being held hostage by Oshi in the big bad summoning room down the line. So this was planned a long time ago. So this is me planting that seed now. The incubus is following the players. So now I have like specific things to call out for. So if you're watching this, players, that is what I was doing way back when. So after they met with Woe, he said that he burned the hands because he didn't care about the hands. Basically, it was just a way for him to get that lifted off his shoulder. Vengeance was his. He doesn't really care for the feeling. After they give the hands to Woe and they get their free lodging, and they go back up and they decide to do a long rest before they go to Lorania Rich, which is where they wanted to go tonight. So they're waiting until nighttime to actually go when it's the hustle and bustle of things going on. So after the long rest, they get a knock on their door, and it's Luna there to retrieve Enzo because she sent him a note earlier saying, hey, I'm going to come get you if you're here. If you're not here, I'll just go to the Lorania Rich by myself. So then she enters, and the group has a bunch of questions for her, like how she was able to find them and things like that. So they disclose all of the information, which was relieving for me as I've been fighting basically tooth and nail to get players to trust my NPCs. So it felt great for them to open up to Luna. Luna was kind of skeptic at first as well to them and felt really uncomfortable, but also loosened up as time went on. And she told them that they found them because she works for a group called the Ravens, and they're like the Daily Prophets. They post things all over the country very quickly, and they use ravens to get things around. Think of like Game of Thrones to send messages. And when they had their fight with the drug addicts, there was a pink tiefling that was doing an interview. I made that all up on the spot. I knew that the tiefling worked for the Ravens, but I didn't know why she was doing there or why she was taking notes. She cropped it up to being the person there was not very bright, and she probably should have ran away. I don't know why she was doing that, but I've been keeping tabs on Enzo. I've been putting out feelers and spent a lot of resources to keep an eye out for Enzo. So then she asks Enzo if she can speak with him privately, and they go outside, and she breaks down and gives Enzo like a heart-to-heart, like, I've been worried sick about you, and then I come to find out that you've been here and you didn't even try to reach out to me, and my heart was broken basically from that. And I had a good speech prepared. I thought it went over well. The group was like texting in the chat like, oh, kiss her, and making jokes with the Eldritch Blast and things like that. So that was really funny, as well as it was good to get that emotion out of Enzo because he struggles with role playing. So I think that was just a good one-on-one way for him to kind of open up. So after they do their long rest and they have spoken with Luna, they say, okay, we're going to go to Lorania Rich now. So they go down, and Woe's like wanting to speak with him before they leave, and he mentions that before he owned this establishment, he actually used to be an adventurer, and kind of what started everything was he was in Lorania Rich, and he was trying to find a secret passage that was behind a illusory painting, and he was caught and then thrown out, and then like a month later is when he got his hand combed off by the Hand of Deceit gang. So he thinks that they might be related somehow, but he's not 100% positive. That was me planting another seed because I want them eventually to find this painting and go in there, but not quite yet. So I just was planting the seed. So then as they're walking to Lorania Ridge, it's nighttime, but it's party time, and they start hearing songs about the Falchieri, like them being dull or bad. And they start hearing songs about them. And they're like so surprised. But Theron, during the long rest, went out and paid bards to like sing about them, to like raise their acclaim as well as damage the Falchieri if they were able to get here. So they kind of have like a leg up on them since they're their competition to get the tower that was promised by Droll way back when. Feels like forever ago, but in game time that was like 3 days ago. So they eventually get to Lorania Ridge, and I have a lot of descriptions for Lorania Ridge, and I think this is where things kind of went downhill because I had just had too much descriptions, and they kind of were like bored out of their minds, even though the descriptions were good and it's a very cool place, and I've been talking about how expensive and luxurious Lorania Ridge was. I think I could have just made it more condensed and then they would have been happy. But Lorania Ridge was very grandiose. There was gardens, there's very tall pillars that's like 40 feet in diameter. Like these things are huge, massive. Like it was built by giants and magic and gives off that aura. They walk inside and they see like a chandelier of rainbows and crystals and everything is luxurious. And a lady comes that's like golden skin and she has like massive black horns that are like onyx color, and she's wearing a veil that looks like gold that's like trickling down as it shimmers in the light. And she offers to give them a tour just because there are so many options here. So they take the tour, which again, I probably should have condensed and made it way less. But I wanted to make sure that they were aware of all of the different things there are to do here and why so many come here. So gave them the rundown, and then they decided that they wanted to sit down in just the general gambling area and start playing some games. I then mentioned that I had to make a perception check because they recognized like some sigil, but they didn't know where it came from and they didn't roll very high. So I used Luna to like mention to them like, oh, that's one of the 8 noble houses. Like they oversee all of the pleasure establishments and like make sure they're all regulated. So then Wink decided to go over and kind of like try to lure this guy whose name is Lucius Serpentina, and he was able to do so. He was basically not enjoying the high stakes game he was playing at. Seems like very dull and boring. He's just doing it because he has to. So he came over to the group and like the lower ends and started playing some games, and he bought everyone drinks and food, and they all were having a great time. Luna and Enzo then go because they noticed some House Cleverly guards, and they go and they play a game of craps with them, and they play for 5 or 6 rounds with them, so probably like 20 minutes. And Luna like pickpockets one of the guards and she gets a piece of parchment. And so I rolled. I didn't know if she would roll very well. The whole plan was for them to get the information about the guards here. That was always the plan. They also looked for the painting, which they didn't find. Again, that was just, they know the area that it's probably in, but they weren't able to investigate it all the way. That was part of the plan. I did have contingencies if they were to find the painting and get past the illusionary wall and go into the place below. So I have all of that planned out already. So if that ever happens, I can get them to go back. So luckily they didn't find that. So they went back to the group, Enzo and Luna, after pickpocketing the guards. And then they played for a while and they left, which was around midnight in game time. And that's where we ended this session. There was some frustrations in that episode due to poor note-taking. My brother who plays Waldo does not take good notes, and I learned this later on. He does take some sort of notes. However, the problem is like there's so many players, so therefore there's a lot of little plot threads that are going. Not a lot, and it's not overly complicated, The plot is they need to get the Black Iron Pact, and once they have the Black Iron Pact, they're going to get information about the lieutenants of the Chain of Orokef, and their goal is to kill one of those lieutenants. That is the whole reason why they're here, is to kill one of the lieutenants. There have been all these little subplots that are happening, but those aren't really relevant. They don't need to delve into those in order to succeed. They just need to focus on the Black Iron Pact and or getting information on the Chain of Orokef. So when they were going to Lorania Ridge, my brother who plays Waldo asked, why are we going? And I think he was just asking like to re-clarify, but my brother who plays Olivax then got frustrated because he wasn't paying attention, and he takes really detailed notes. Out of everyone who plays, he takes the most notes, he pays the most attention, and he's the most present while we're playing. And that's just one of the detriments to playing online, is some people aren't as present because they don't have a group of people around that are keeping them accountable or like, engaging them. So I kind of lost a lot of people at the end of this session when we were in Let On Your Rich. Luckily, there wasn't too much that they missed, but it was really frustrating for me to see that players were just checked out and just have given up on the session because they didn't take good notes or they're not reviewing their notes on why they should go to certain places. As well as I think they could always ask me like, hey, why would we go to Let On Your Rich? Like, I remember it being important for some reason, possibly. Can you give me some reasons? And then I actually listed some reasons as well to help out my brother who's playing Olavax, kind of support and like why would be a good decision. Yeah, so that was the end of the session. And then finally, we got to play in person. Unfortunately, that session is not recorded, so I'm going to try to give a little bit more detail as to what happened, both for the players, myself, and those who might watch this wanting to know what happened during that session. So the players leave Let On Your Rich and they're heading home and they're walking down, a street and there's canopies all over the place. People are selling things. It's around midnight, so it's not as busy, but it's still busy. People are out and about, and all of a sudden they hear like a scream and they see like these big shadows that have horns, and these are shadow demons. They start attacking the players. They don't understand exactly why. And then after the first round, they see people like chasing these shadow demons. So the shadow demons appear like they're running away from these people. So the players kind of like get out of the way, and some like Olavax and Blasius Esquire and some others like really can't get out of the way just because of where they're positioned. So they start fighting them. And the whole point of this combat was to introduce Oshi the Wild, who is the villain. That was the whole point of this. There was as well as to drop the list, and I'll get to that here in a second. So they start fighting. They see all these people running in. There's bugbears. They're wearing they have candle sigils on their gear, and I tell them that this is House Cleverly, like the symbol, since you guys are looking to House Cleverly. You also see these other people who are wearing like Chain of Otokef stuff, and they don't have any House Cleverly sigils or anything like that. So there's like two separate groups, one coming from this way, one coming from this way, and they're like all colliding, trying to get to these shadow demons. And so they're trying to kill them, trying to fight them. Then they ask like, oh, do you want us to stop them, like trying to get in their good graces, or do you want us to kill them? Then Oshi, or the White Dragonborn is how I was referencing her the whole fight because they didn't know who she was yet. She says not to kill them, keep them alive. She then pulls out like this prism, like a pyramid looking thing, and throws it, and it's like a Pokeball, and it like sucks up the shadow demon. I had to make saves, but obviously I had them all fail in the first try just so it would go a little bit faster, because that was not the whole point of this session, was the combat. I was able to knock out, I believe, Blasius, and I got pretty close on a couple other ones. I had one of them be a greater shadow demon at the last second. So I just made it so like grew, so the players were like confused, like, oh, are the other ones going to grow? Like, we don't know, but that was just a fault on my end, so I just kind of incorporated it into the token size because a greater is a large, and while the other ones are normal. So I feel like the players were having a lot of fun. We were driving off each other. My brother, who plays Waldo, had music going. I'll put up a picture of what it looked like, but I was sitting on one end, and then on the other side we had a screen that had the combat encounter, and then everyone was on the sides. There was only one problem, was when I used Roll20, it eats up a lot of battery on my computer. And usually when we're playing, I'm at my desk here, so I have everything plugged in to outlets. However, we were traveling in Utah, and I forgot my charger. So about halfway through the combat, my computer was at 16% from 100%. That is not my computer battery. That is just Roll20 plus OneNote eating up a lot of stuff. It probably is my battery as well, not usually. So I had to just turn off Roll20, and I try to give access to all tokens to my cousin who plays Tink, who had it up on his screen. But unfortunately, he did not, which was fine. I don't think it hindered anything too much. So the players were able to hold the shadow demons in line while Oshi was able to get them up in her prism. And then Tink went invisible, which made everything really complicated because he wanted to steal things and like ask questions, but he was still invisible, which I just think it was fine. It was fine in the moment, but looking back, I just think like, why does it need to be that complicated? Let's just go visible so we don't have to like talk about the semantics of exactly what is happening. Because he asked Oshi if she was he calls Lieutenant Oshi, and she like turns, so they like, oh, she's the lieutenant, which is fine. Like, it doesn't matter. She would have turned regardless. But I asked, well, are you invisible or not? Because there's a crowd of people on both sides of you that are now like coming back. Because when the shadow demons came, everyone spread to the sides. Now everyone's coming back after everything has been dispersed as well. So it was fine if they know that she's a lieutenant. It doesn't really affect or change anything whatsoever. It just gives them a little bit more insight as to who Oshi is. One notable thing that did happen that was planned from the get-go was one of the bugbears ran, and the players had made water, and then they poured a bunch of water out from his bag of holding, which he had in there. Tink did, and then Waldo cast a spell. I think it was Waldo. He cast a free spell, and I said, trying to like be inspired from Baldur's Gate, where like if you put water and then cast lightning or ice, it like freezes faster or like more. So made it difficult terrain, and the bugbear was running to try to get these shadow demons, and it slipped on the ice and like slid into Olivax. No damage or anything, but something fell out of its pocket, and it was a test. Number one for Olivax: would he steal it, or would he just let it be, or would he give it back? And two, this list that came from the bugbear was planned again from the get-go as far back as Wink being abducted. So this list has a list of demons or creatures on it that are used for summoning, and it was given to them by Oshi. It's in Draconic, and this also fulfills the fortune that was given to Olivax that he would kill the creator of the list. This is the list that it's referring to. Oshi is the creator, and the fortune is that Olivax will kill Oshi. So that is the mastermind behind that was me. I'm kidding. That was the whole plan, to get everything to kind of link together and all make sense. So he stole it though, and he pockets and then helped the guard up. They had some other questions for Oshi and her little band of followers, some of which are incubus and succubus that are transformed to look like drow. There was one really cool magic person that uses shadow magic, which I'll get to here in a minute as well on what that is. So they went back and they discussed the list and things like that, and Olivax mentioned that, this is very difficult for him to do because he's all about honor and things like that. So he gives the list to the group, they discuss it, and then we pause and we do a little break and we all go eat. This was the bulk of the session, was planning for the Masquerade Ball, which is going to happen in 8 days in game time in the next session that we play. So I told them, okay, I'm going to go around one by one, and you're going to tell me over the next eight days, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to talk to? As far as prepping for this masquerade and things you're wanting to do over this. So people wanted to be skipped and we went in different orders. So I may come back and edit this later, but as far as what happened, we went in this order. Olivax, he wanted to get the Nutcracker, as well as like get more information about what is this Black Iron Pact, things like that, which is tied into Wink. Wink wanted to go speak to the Lady of Masks and try to get close with her. And he also wanted to research this list and like what it could possibly be used for, and like what are these creatures on here, even though it had like a short descriptions of what they were. So I had him roll, and he was given 7 tickets from the Lady of Masks. She did not have anything extra for Luna, so she can't go unless they figure out some other way to get her there. Then we went to Tink, and Tink probably spent the most time just because he had the most information to give. He wanted to go seek Niall and Claude. So he found them, and then he asked Niall about the origins of magic, and I described Niall as like an uptight, with like a proper English accent, very rude and proper. So, and he acted like Luna Lovegood's dad. He was always like doing this with his hair, and he's like sweaty, and he's like paranoid out the wazoo, so always like checking for things. And he asked him about the origins of magic, which was also part of the fortune teller who told him to seek Niall if you're wanting to know like the nature of magic. So he told him the nature of magic. I had this prepared a long time ago. I spent a lot of time trying to make the magic of D&D, spell slots, races, your power level, how you gain spell slots and things like that. How does that actually make sense to the common person who doesn't like use game mechanics? Like, how would your characters explain this? So I spent a lot of time, and I came up with this jars analogy. So the analogy that Niall gave, and he had like props, and I also used like props from people's things at the table. So he explains that magic comes from the weave, and imagine the weave like a fabric of reality, like the Matrix, or like a lake that covers anything and everything. People who are magically inclined find ways to connect to this lake, and they siphon or they get some power to it, and it goes to these jars. And the amount of power you have is indicated by the jars that you have. So, for example, some magic you can just cast at will, like cantrips, because they require very little magic, whereas like a fireball or like a meteor storm, these require massive jars. in order to fill, and they have and in turn have a lot of energy. So, and unfortunately my computer died at this point, so I didn't really have any of my notes, which I had everything written out all really cool. So I had to just go off of memory, which I think may have worked out better because he had questions that were different than what I had written down. But so that's how I explained it to him. You have these different jars, and when you get stronger or your magical prowess, your race also gives you different access to the weave and to fill up these jars. As you use magic, it empties the jar. You're not able to empty a jar halfway. It's all or nothing. So if you cast a level 1 spell with a level 5 slot, for example, or a larger connection, it would expend all of it, potentially making it more powerful, like how you upcast spells, or it would just be excess spell that's wasted. So kind of have to train and be able to use. Once you expend all of your magical energy, you have to wait for the weave to refill it. And that's done over, rest, discipline, focus, things like that. So they then had different questions for him to follow up, like, oh, how does an artificer differ from like someone who works for divinity? I did luckily have all that memorized, like, he explained that divinity magic, so like clerics, paladins, warlocks, druids, they channel their energy through either the gods give them access to the weave, their patron, their connection to nature, or their oath to a specific cause is what grants them their power. People who are very skilled with like discipline, like people who use ki and chi and psionics, they are not like those who cast magic, as they have granted access through basically sure discipline and will, and are able to do different things because of it, which is why the magic of a monk or like a Githyanki is much, much different than the magic of, human paladin or dragonborn paladin or human wizard. So that was my explanation for that. As far as like how a artificer works, it is very similar to a wizard, whereas they learn their technique through study. However, instead of casting the weave through themselves, they are casting it through an object. So they imbue the weave power that they've gained into an object in order to cast their spells. They can cast it without it. It is very difficult for them, and it's very rarely done for them. I also explained that this is a sort of magic that existed prior to the Reign of Chaos. The Reign of Chaos was a lore that I provided way back when in session 0 to my players, where it was like there were some gods that signed the Shadow Oath, and because of it, they unleashed the demon lords upon the material plane. The people who lived basically in the presence of God, like the Garden of Eden, fell, and everyone was destroyed, and the Reign of Chaos began, where people were killed and darkness reigned. And then the Reign of Chaos ended with the Daughters of Ash, which are these 5 heroes. Think of it like a different version of the Deathly Hallows, where like it was given to them by these shadow gods who betrayed the prime gods, and they gave these tokens as like a parting gift, which are ultimately good, but they make people evil, just like the Deathly Hallows are ultimately good things, but they taint and make people want to do bad things as they give into their carnal nature. So that was how I described it. I also described like the people who use this magic before the Reign of Chaos, they were able to create magical weapons that are much, much greater than what we have now. Like, we are just scratching the surface with the magic items that we can build now, which is why there's so few of them and they're so low level, like the abilities. Tink was just like so excited, and he asked about like his pet goose that he has. He's like, oh, that's my master Claude. Claude was turned into this goose, and we're unable to turn him back without killing him. And I explained like that's just because there are 9 levels to the weave, but there's actually 12, and we're limited to 9. There's other ways around that people have found, such as shadow magic, which has access to the weave in a different way. It's called the dark weave. This is all from the Forgotten Realms. I know that they had a shadow weave. It didn't stick, but that's how they had it for a certain time, I guess. So in my world, it just exists, and the shadow weave comes from the plane of shadow, and so you're drawing energy from this plane of shadow. It allows you to be more powerful than level 9 in certain aspects. However, the costs are different. So instead of resting, you have to like make sacrifices, or like part of your soul is taken as you cast spells and magic. So overall you're more powerful, but you also give more and lose yourself as you do it. So there's give and takes of both. Niall also then mentions how there's true name magic, which is something I mentioned in session 0 as well. Like, every magical caster has a true name that they were given by Mystra, the god of magic. And this is something that no one knows, and is something that everyone that has one knows what it is, even though it may not be present in their mind. Like deep down, they know what it is if they ever needed it. And Niall explains that this true name magic allows you to have dominion over someone. Like they can't affect you with their magic, for example. However, if you're wanting to access, he believes, and this is all skeptical for the players, but in reality, true name magic allows you to reach level 12. However, like you have to give your true name to someone and they have to speak it. Like you can't write your true name down willingly. Like someone else couldn't write it down willingly. So that's how you'd have to memorize it. And then you can do chants together to make greater magic as you're offering yourself. Like you're being vulnerable with your own self in order to create for the better good, which is the whole point of true name magic. Typically people who are evil would never use true name magic because no one would be allied together. It would everyone be fend for themselves. Killing allies to be better is how I envision that going, as well as a lot of skepticism. So basically Tink was so excited he offered to become Niall's apprentice, and he's like, I don't need an apprentice, but if you're willing to fetch things for me. And he's like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. I just want to be able to become greater and better. So Niall's like, sure, whatever, that's fine with me. So Tink became Niall's apprentice, and that's why Tink's thing took so long, is because I had so much information to give. So after the session, I did post things on the Discord of the shorter, more condensed version of those things, so it's more clear. So then we went over to Waldo, and all Waldo wanted to do was scout the place, House Cleverly, and get the layout of all the different rooms, things like that, and deduce what would be the best options for getting upstairs, because they know that they can't go upstairs as guests, and that's most likely where the Black Iron Pact will be. So unfortunately, I didn't have the map, so I didn't really have much information to give him, which is a bummer, because I know Waldo felt kind of ghosted in that scenario. I asked for all these different things, everyone got all this great stuff, I didn't get anything. So I made sure to make it a priority to make the map and give him good details. Then we went to Enzo, and Enzo wanted to try to infiltrate the book club of the Chain of Vodokef, and I told him that that's not possible, but the way he rolled pretty good. So how we did that was he just befriended some guards and talked to them, used the book as icebreakers, and was able to become really good friends with some of these people over these next 8 days. He also applied and got a job at La Rania Rich as a low-level server. So he now has some access to the kitchens and to bar area. And this was another good way for me to explain just how secure La Rania Rich is. And I told him even though you're an employee here, you barely have access anywhere. You have access to certain other rooms that a normal person wouldn't be able to get into. Yeah, so just the kitchens and stuff. So Enzo also learned from Luna, who got to spend 8 more days researching La Rania Rich, as her mind has kind of been at ease, and she's able to really get to work, as Enzo's not in her mind anymore, and she's not really looking into the patron as much, which has been a priority for her, to find out who her patron exactly is, name and things like that, which is really close. And they will learn eventually that Luna's and Enzo's patron is Tasha from the Tasha's Cauldron and everything, also known as Iglu, the prior demon. Oh, I forgot to mention, Enzo got this feeling of wanting to kill Oshi as well when they were having their fight, and that's the same thing that Luna got when seeing Oshi as well. So Luna told Enzo about the hierarchy and was able to give names of the higher up people. They're known as the Ivory Jacks. They didn't get that far in their information, but yeah. So he was also able to get the low level of the Chain of Vodokef. The ranks are called links, all entry level, and then there's one called the Chain Master, but they don't know exactly, they've never seen someone who's that rank, but they know it exists. That was partially because I forgot who the rank is in between that, which is the Chain Weaver. And then there's the Ivory Jack, which is the highest level you can get, I believe. And that, so it goes Link is the lowest level, and then Chain Weaver is the second level, then the Chain Master, and then Golden Anchor is the fourth, and then Ivory Jack highest. And all the Ivory Jacks work in La Rania Rich, and they all wear a white ring, which they will bring up. I will bring up eventually to the players to give them a hint of who the Ivory Jacks are. So all the lieutenants wear this ivory ring, as well as a lot of the members in La Rania Rich wear it. So yeah, I just gave them the names, and some of them they were able to get the race. That was just off the top of what I remembered, as well as not wanting to give too much information, since I already did that with Tink, giving him a lot of lore and information. So last we went to Theron, and Theron wanted to befriend a lot of the House Cleverly guards, which he was able to do since they're both bugbears. And he also, hanging out with them, was able to get a guard thing commissioned from Gilded Threads and Mystique Masks, so he can dress up as them when he goes to the ball and kind of take off his cloak and be a guard. So that was, I thought, very clever. And him and Enzo kind of worked together, since Enzo now has access to the kitchens, to try and maybe find out which guards are working the events. Although they did learn this Let On Your Rich hosts 50 parties a week, and there's just so many people who work there, it's almost impossible to track, which just is another nod to how efficient Luna has been able to find the hierarchy so quickly. So he poisons the food, the breakfast on the day of, and I had him roll to see if he was able to poison the right people. So he was not. He was able to poison some of them, but not enough to get Enzo there, or enough to make a real difference in the number of guards that will be present. So it will have an effect, and I will remember to bring it up during the party that one of the guards or some of the guards got sick. So I'm excited to share that little win with them. But the rest of the session was just the players planning for how to approach this masquerade ball and what to do. So the settle that I remember was they plan on bringing Luna to the party, and they're planning on doing that by making Waldo turn into a spider, and they're going to give him the bag of holding before he does that, because they don't think that they'll be able to bring in the bag of holding. And then once they get into the party, the plan is to have Waldo, Olivax, Blasius, and Enzo make a distraction on the bottom floor, either with a fight or a loud noise. They have a bunch of stuff at their disposal which they can use, so I'm excited. I hope they use some of these items I've given them, but if not, I'm excited to see how they do that. Then Tink, Wink, and Theron will all go upstairs to try and find this Black Iron Pact. They know that the room's sealed. There's 4 rooms that they weren't able to get, that Waldo wasn't able to get into, which is indicated on the map which one he wasn't able to get into. And they know that the door will not be opened unless a code is given, and they have this code, which was stolen by Luna when they were at the Run Your Rich. So they have everything they need. They were also told that they have tickets, and these tickets are marked when you enter, and they are given on your way out. So that way, you can't enter, then leave, then enter again, just in case people try to fake tickets and things like that. So they're altered magically, and then they're given at the end of the party. And then House cleverly uses those tickets to disperse, or they mix up and use differently, like a stamp, how the stamp is similar, but it's different each time. So the ticket is the stamp in this case, and the stamp changes, they alter these, maybe they make it a different shape or what have you. So yeah, I thought the in-person session, I don't think it was massively amazing, a whole new experience. I just think it was the best version of the experience, because everyone's around the same table. They can have side conversations, which is not possible on Zoom, so I think that's very beneficial, as well as everyone is forced to be present. If you're dozing off, everyone notices and can see how much of a discourteous that is when it's in person. Whereas on Zoom, I can just turn off my camera or whatever, and I can do whatever I want. So overall, I thought that was a great session. I'm very excited to see how they handle the masquerade. As far as the map and things under the hood, I don't have anything tricksy or anything planned. I just have, a really well guard in the room that's sealed, and some guards outside. They're not going to be patrolling. They're going to be stagnant guards, and there's going to be servers everywhere. So if they have issues, the guards will call the servers over in order to handle things. The guards aren't going to leave their post unless absolutely necessary. They also know that the guards have scrolls, to see invisibility. They have sphere scrolls, so they kind of know what they're walking into. So I'm very excited. I hope that they have a lot of fun. That was the whole point that they chose this, was to be able to have some sort of heist. They have more heists coming in the future, but this is the main portion of the campaign, is the heist of the Black Iron Pact. So yeah, so stay tuned to see what happens after they go to the masquerade and how it all goes down. If you stayed all the way here, I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll see you later.